All right, so for those who come from a CrossFit background, I've done multiple seminars now at CrossFit gyms, and I've realized that my advice is very opposite to a lot of things that you're told. Now, all I can say to that is I've got the injury prevention background, I've deadlifted 1,050 pounds, I understand both sides, and please, just take my word for it. That's what you either paid here for me to listen to my own voice or to take my advice. I suppose it's up to you. While I put my shoes on, let's just go around the room and go like, what's our biggest issue deadlifting? And I'm particularly interested, when it gets heavy, what feels the hardest, or where or why do you fail? Let's just start on this side of the room.
It's been a while.
Been a while?
Been a while.
Okay, I know.
I wouldn't know where to start.
I always stall out right here, and I feel like it's getting my hips through is like my weakest.
Awesome.
My sticking spot.
Cool.
That first inch off the ground.
Yep.
That first pull. This far.
So everyone is going to fall in one of those two categories. Okay, you'll notice that there's really nobody who fails like right here on a regular basis, and there's no one who fails right here on a regular basis. It's always here or there. Okay, for the most part, once you get up here, you're pretty good to go. So we're going to frame the whole discussion today around how do we even out those sticking points and just general advice. So usually I go bottom up, but let's go top down because I teased you guys with your super stiff spines. When we think about something like a snatch or a clean and jerk, the cue is to keep your upper back very stiff and keep your shoulder blades back. Tell me why. What are we trying to accomplish there?
Bar path.
Okay, bar path is one, but you could also do that with a rounded back and forward shoulders.
Transferability, like that back position applies to more things in like kind of, I guess, CrossFit than,
Okay, cool.
than not.
Cool, there's an element to that. It's really because at the knee, just above the knee, if your spine is long, you're going to be in the best position to be able to triple extend. So you almost, when you clean and jerk and when you snatch, you almost adopt this position that's as weak as possible off the ground in order to be as powerful as possible up above the knee. But you can see naturally how this creates a big issue either off the ground or at the knee, because now we're trying to deadlift 300 pounds rather than clean 100 pounds, and it requires something completely different. Okay? So, when we think about the areas of our deadlift, for such a simple movement, there's a lot of checkpoints to go through. So we start with our eyes, then we have shoulder blades, we have our thoracic vertebrae, we have our core, we've got our hips, we've got our feet, and we have our toes. So, this is all going to circle around the discussion of there's ways to make the bottom position strong and there's ways to make the top position strong. Okay? Let's just go, we'll start at the bottom, why not? With toes, okay? Toes can be here, they can be here, and they can be anywhere in between. All right? Now, knees are very inflexible in terms of a joint. They're our most controlled joint, where the only thing a knee can do is forward and backward. Okay, if we affix our feet to the ground and I'm here, all I can do is this, and if I go out here, all I can do is this. Okay? When we start getting in this territory, it's not really how our knees are designed to move. All right? So, if I take a very forward foot angle, what happens to my knees when I bend down to the bottom? Yeah, they push right over. Okay? Why might this be advantageous? Change the bar path. That's usually not a good thing. Why do we think this could be really useful? Okay? The further our knees go over the bar, the more we're going to create a torque about our knee for our quads to work. Okay? The easiest way to conceptualize this is if you've done a sumo deadlift versus a conventional deadlift and how different that feels. Okay? The further your knees go over the bar, the more drive we're going to have, okay, from our quads. The issue being exactly what happens to you. If you push your knees over the bar, then we get the bar to our knee, but then we have all this room, okay? Because the bar can't go through your shin, yeah? Conversely, if you turn your toes right out, you can sit your hips back a lot more, vertical shin, and now when we're here, there's much less space. And so pulling that up your thigh becomes much, much easier. Does that concept make sense? Okay? Now, same thing applies really with the feet. The closer your feet, the more forward your knees go. The wider your feet, the more vertical your shin stays. Which is why you'll see some of the guys at the top level, they struggle so much at lockout that they'll get themselves out here and they'll deadlift like this. Because here, now we've got very little room and it's very easy to keep the bar close. So if you do an analysis on yourself and you say, okay, for my deadlifts, I need to improve off the floor. Okay? What are the two things we're gonna do? Yeah, feet come in, feet point forward. Okay? Simply put, you do anything you can to push your knees over the bar. If your issue is at the knee, you want to make sure that the moment arm, or the vertical distance between the bar and your hips, is as small as possible, meaning you can't push your knees over the bar. Okay? Moment arm is an important thing to go over just quickly. Really basic physics. If you were to try to close that door, if you were to try to close that door and you were to push right next to the hinges, that means it's very difficult, but very fast if you accomplish it. And if you push closer to the end of that door, it's very easy, but much slower, okay? The way that applies here is anytime this bar, which is just gonna be this dot, anytime it is in your hands, we're gonna call that your shoulders, okay? The bar will always be directly under your shoulders, whether you like it or not, okay? So if the bar is directly under your shoulders and you're in this position, the important variable is what is this measurement, okay? That measurement determines the torque at your hips. The work that your hips can't do, your low back's going to do, which is fine, but it's a consideration to be made. Okay? Meaning that if we keep those knees back, the torque on our hips is going to comparatively decrease because the bar is closer. Okay? Now, we're going to work our way up with a lot of the exact same principles, really. So we've got our feet and our toes. When we go to our hips, largely our foot position and our knee position determines where our hips end up. Okay? Again, because your shoulders have to end up directly over the bar. If they don't, and there'd be more than one person in this room who would fall into the territory of like, you go to pull a big deadlift, and the first thing that happens is this, and then you lift up. That's simply, if you start with your shoulders behind the bar, as soon as you pull up, physics is just gonna launch your body over the bar, and when your shoulder's over the bar, now you pull up. Okay, there's one little thing I've forgotten here, which is going to be your lats. Okay, but we'll get there in a second. All right, so those are your hips, yeah? Hips largely determined by getting your shoulders on top of the bar. Now, it's not that simple. We talked about core. If we talk about our thoracic vertebrae, thinking back to, if we keep this distance as small as possible, it's going to help us at lockout. How can we manipulate our thoracic vertebrae to decrease the space between our shoulders and our hips? Yeah, okay? You round, okay? Now, I know CrossFit ears bleeding. Stick with me. Okay, now, if I keep my upper back really stiff, and we're gonna link in our shoulder blades, if I keep my upper back really stiff, and I keep my shoulder blades back, and I make a genuine effort to get down to the bar, I'm all the way down here, right? You gotta like really coil yourself up, okay? Which is very useful when it comes to clean and jerks and snatches. When it comes to deadlifts, we want shoulders to be pulled forward, and we want our upper back to be slightly rounded, okay? Remember, when we stand here naturally, this is the position of our upper back. The position is not dead straight. And so if you think dead straight upper back, you're taking yourself out of that normal neutral range, and you're putting yourself into an extended position, which is not inherently dangerous, but it is inherently inefficient, okay? Very hard to round your upper back if you're someone used to keeping it stiff, but the best cue is literally just look at the bar or look at your heels. Okay? So we're gonna get set. You're gonna get your feet where they feel comfortable. You're gonna round your shoulders forward. You're gonna tuck your chin. And now we're gonna reach to the bar here. And that's your position. Okay? You compare that to this. Okay? Which is particularly challenging for me, but it's definitely an extra 4 inches to go down. Okay? If you have to go down an extra 4 inches, we're gonna naturally have that always be larger. Okay? You're always gonna lack power at the knee if you go all the way down there. Okay? Shoulder blades forward, upper back rounded. Now, who here knows about the lats when it comes to deadlifting? Yeah? Lats really important to be using when we're doing something like a clean and jerk, like a snatch. But in the context of the deadlift, it's slightly different. So to go over the anatomy of the lats, they start by attaching big spot on your low back. They come around your sides and they insert on the front of your shoulders. Okay, to contract any muscle, all that muscle does is bring where it attaches and where it inserts closer together, which is why our biceps, they attach on our forearms, so they'll curl our hands up to our shoulders. When it comes to lats, think front of shoulder, through the armpit to our lower back. The way in which to work those is then internal rotation and pulling down towards you, okay? Pulling your shoulders down and away. So if we want our lats to work the hardest, we internally rotate and we feel like we're doing a pullover, okay? The easiest way to conceptualize this is if you get on a cable machine or you get a thick band and you put it up on a pull-up bar and you do pullovers till you get tired. What immediately happens when you get tired? You start hunching like this because this is now your mechanical advantage for your lats, okay? Just to round this out with the Olympic lifting, because I know it's a contrast to it, if you have your shoulders forward when the bar is at your knee, it's inherently less powerful here. So you're not gonna go from here to an efficient triple extension. You have to be here to triple extend properly, okay? But if we're deadlifting, we're not looking to triple extend, okay? Now, if we start talking about something like cycling, you're doing a set of 20 deadlifts, think about the return you're going to get if you focus on your shoulder blades going forward and your upper back rounding a bit. Then my position just becomes there rather than there, yeah? Efficiency absolutely through the roof. Which, I don't know if the guys know that they do it or not, or if it's intentional, but when you watch skilled CrossFitters doing this, 80% of the motion comes from their upper back and their shoulders. Their hips actually stay super high. Yeah, it's like an RDL. Do you actually think about doing that? Yeah. So, that's our lats, our thoracic vertebrae, and our shoulder blades. Our eyes can set everything up. So I want you guys to think, am I someone who struggles more off the ground, or am I someone who struggles more at my knee? I'm gonna put a blanket rule on anyone who doesn't know and say you're a person who's gonna struggle off the ground. Okay, so to set yourself up for success, we're gonna go toes forward, feet a little bit closer. Everyone is gonna have shoulder blades forward. Everyone's gonna have a slightly rounded upper back. We're gonna set that up by having eyes look down at your heels. Okay, we look down at the heels, we're here, and we're up. Okay, what is the only other thing to consider through that whole movement that we spent 20 minutes doing? Thank you. Good. We're using our time wisely. Now, you guys are gonna have time to go through deadlifts, but I wanna go through all three before we kick into it so that we can go through warm up. You guys can do your own thing. Before we do that, is there any questions about the deadlift in general?
So when you're talking about eyes, right, you start by looking at your heels with that one. Like, where do your eyes go during your deadlift?
Don't think about it.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Because in the end, you guys deadlifts, you don't really have to ever pull your shoulders back. You'll get down calls if you're here, so it doesn't really matter that much. For these boys who actually have to pull back, if we go back to the principle of moment arms, the moment arm when the bar is on your thigh is mathematically as close to zero as it can be. So it's actually no issue to go from here to here. Yeah? You'll never fail there. So it's not a huge consideration. And once you just put that out of your head, you're never going to be thinking about where your eyes are. Yeah. Yeah.
Just go over the different ribs, because like I know some people do it like this way.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I'm actually going to share an interesting little tidbit about mixed grip as well. Okay, grips. We've got normal MOG grip, literally just grabbing it like you grab anything else, like that, okay? Thumb over top of your fingers. When we go to Olympic lifting, or if you're going to want to be as efficient as possible, then you go to your hook grip, which is basically, you're gonna use the web on your fingers like a trigger. You're gonna dig that into the bar as hard as you can. That's gonna send your thumb across, and now we're gonna grab our thumb with our fingers, making that loop, okay? Very painful on the thumb, very useful and efficient. The third way is to go over-under, okay? Now, over-under comes with inherent risk because now there's an asymmetry involved, but there's also your bicep on the underarm, okay? So, when you go over-under, you have to have that movement happen from the wrist and the elbow, not from the shoulder, okay? So what I cue people to do to start is you have to start here, and then go down, okay? Conversely, you'll see many people going here, and like this. Yeah, that's the number one thing to look out for. Your underhand gets away from your body. Now, naturally, when you turn one hand over, the pinky is going to be the equivalent of the index finger, right? They're both going to be the closest thing on the bar. But you get your most force from your index finger and from your middle finger. So when you go over-under, you want to line up middle fingers and middle fingers. You don't want to line up pinky and index finger, okay? Meaning that if we're going over-under and I'm going to have my index finger on the side of the knurling there, I also have to have my index finger on the side of the knurling there, okay? And these are my deadlifts, okay? More practical, I would probably go pinky on that, and I would go index finger on that, and I would be here, okay? It looks a little bit lopsided, but if you recognize your hand power comes from here, and these are passengers, then just make sure that we're making sure that index fingers are lining up. So if my index fingers are 2 inches inside, index fingers are 2 inches inside, and I'm here, you'll notice that that's going to feel much more symmetrical. It's not going to feel like the bar is tilting away. Only other little bit about that underhand is you have to maximally squeeze your tricep. Okay? That is going to reciprocally inhibit your bicep, and that's going to stop any bicep issues from coming. Yeah, pretty rare for you guys to tear biceps, but wouldn't be uncommon for you to get like a tendonitis or something like that. Anything else deadlift before we go practical with that one?
What do you think about, like, I guess longevity, like, you know, like obviously you're deadlifting a shit ton. What do you think about like the longevity of that kind of like slight rounding of the thoracic? Like, do you have any concern about that? Like, would you deadlift like that for the rest of your life? I guess it's like you would?
100%. Because really, it's the same reason I'm not concerned about my thoracic rounding when I'm sitting at a desk. Because it's impossible to fight. And then that position, you're like, well, what's inherently harmful about that position? And then we could get to a conversation about overhead mobility, but then so long as you're taking care of your overhead mobility, then we're mostly okay. Yeah? It's more an attitude of maintaining the neutral position from when we're standing to our training, rather than really like folding it over. Yeah? Now, I see, to be honest, I see like this as dangerous as this. So long as load intensity volume are the same. So health consideration, not a huge deal. Anything else deadlifting wise? No? Cool. Let's move on to yoke. Can I grab, do you have water?
Yeah.